Hey there neighbors, Kevin here with etrailer, and today we're going to be taking a closer look at the LubriMatic Prime Guard Hi-Temp wheel bearing grease. So depending on your application, there's going to be different types of grease for it. With our specific trailer today, this is an enclosed trailer. It's going to be hauling a lot of stuff and be out on the road. It's not really going to be in any kind of marine or water application where we would want to switch over to that other kind of grease that's designed to be able to have water get into the hubs and still be able to withstand it and keep the bearings nice and lubricated. With this one, it's meant for those highway trailers like what we have here, and it's going to have a 500-degree dropping point, which is essentially going to mean that we can heat this up all the way to 500 degrees, which would mean the hub and a bunch of other components in here would probably fail first before our grease does. So we know that we're nice and safe using our Prime Guard. This grease is going to come in a variety of different containers. The specific container that I have right now, this is more so meant for those times where you're repacking bearings and you need a tub of grease so that way you can sit there and scrape against your hand, or if you're filling a bearing packer, or if you're going to be actually filling up a grease circ fitting like you would on your spindle. That's where you're going to want to switch over to the tube style, just like we have here, which is inside of our grease gun, and you're also going to want to pick up a grease gun. Now, if you have a boat trailer, maybe you have a camper as well, you don't want to be mixing and matching these with that marine grease or any other grease that has a different base. This one is a white lithium complex, and we want to make sure that the grease that we're putting in there is going to match that. Otherwise, the two greases will end up destroying each other, and then they'll just kind of disintegrate, and we're not really getting that protection anymore. So it's super important to just find that grease that you really prefer and stick with it and make sure that you are not mixing and matching, so that way you know you have the right kind of protection. There we go. And you can see all the old grease, and a lot of that dark stuff that you're seeing kind of mixed into it is essentially our brake dust. So as the shoes start to get worn and we get that brake dust kind of powdering on the inside here, it all gets stuck and attracted into that grease. And if we don't deal with that routinely, it can end up causing issues with the spindle. You can have wear on the spindle, and then at that point there's no salvaging it. You got to replace it. We'll wipe all that down, and then we can spray it with some brake clean. Help clean it up the rest of the way. And I'm also going to grab my grease gun, and we'll use this grease circ fitting to push out the dirty grease that's still inside of our spindle. So hitting it with a little bit of brake clean. Now, in my case, the trailer brakes are going to be replaced as well, so I'm also going to pop those off. But at the same time, this is a good chance to actually take a look at your shoes, make sure that they're still functioning properly, they got enough life on them, you don't have any grease on them. The other side of this trailer had the grease seals fail, grease got splattered all over the brake shoes. So essentially at that point, those brake assemblies are no longer working, because now we're losing our friction because we have that grease preventing the friction with our trailer hub, which is the other half of this. We want to look at our hub on the inside as well. This one's not as bad as what it was like over on the other side. There's not as much grease buildup as what we had over there, but it is still pretty dirty. So what I want to do is check it, and if we're having any divots where we can really put our fingernail into, or maybe there's real big ridges on our hub face here, that's a sign that we need to replace it. Because the brake magnet right here rides on this section of our hub, and if it's not making good contact, we no longer have good braking power. We're going to pop out our grease seal. You can see right here the actual grease seal numbers are still there. So the GS2250DL, we could use that to go figure out the correct replacement. In our case, we've already got that, so at this point we're just going to pop it out. You're going to have to damage this to pop it out, so that's why we always say if you're repacking your bearings, you're going to be replacing that grease seal as well. And what I like to do is just take a big flathead screwdriver, and I'm going to hammer in on one side, which it kind of looks like this side's popped up a little bit more compared to over here. So I think I'm going to start over here. And as you start to hammer in on one side, it will typically push the other side up out of the way. And if not, it'll give you a little bit of wiggle room, and then you can kind of get your screwdriver in there and pry up on it a little bit better. So we'll start by popping that. And then what I like to do is get it fully in there. I'll kind of put my hand over it, and I'm going to hit the end of my screwdriver to help pop it out. And it may take a few times of doing that to get it to fully go. You may even have to kind of put your feet up on the hub too. Find that easier when you're working with something that's a little bit heavier duty. If you don't have a seal puller, if you do, it'll be a lot easier. So right there, we popped it out. It did get grease kind of everywhere. So be ready for that. Wear some clothes you do not care about, because usually doing anything involving grease is typically going to get all over you. Wipe all that old gross grease out of here. I'm also going to grab the old bearing. We'll toss that since we're replacing it today. And then just the process of just wiping this whole thing out. It's going to take a few shop towels. I would definitely throw some more brake clean in here and clean this up, because there's a lot of brake dust buildup in here. And we got a little bit of grease from popping out that grease seal. Now that I have this all wiped out, you can see our inner race right here. And if you are having to replace that, then the easiest way to get this replaced is to actually freeze your races beforehand. You'll definitely have a challenge prying it out. You'll definitely have to use a punch, or if you have a puller, that makes it a little bit easier to grip down on the bottom here and kind of pull it all the way out. But freezing it will make it smaller, so that way when you're going in with a new one, I would just typically just pop them into your freezer the night before, take them out right when you're going to do it. You can drop it right in. It should be just slightly smaller, just because as it freezes, it'll kind of compress a little bit, and then you can drop it in. You may have to tap it a little bit with a punch to get it fully seated, and then as it starts to warm up, it'll expand enough to fully seat into place, so that way just makes it a little bit easier instead of a big challenge of punching it down. But with all that said, now what we can do is pack our bearings. So we'll pick up our inner and outer bearing. So to pack our bearings, we're going to need a tub of grease. We've got our Hi-Temp grease, because this isn't a marine application. So what we'll want to do is grab a good glob of that, and we'll slap it into the palm of one of our hands. And then we're going to take our bearing, and I'm going to start with our inner bearing, because we're going to drop that into our hub first. And we want the open side of it. You can see how this side's a lot more open than the tapered side here. So we're going to push our grease through, and you'll start to see it come up between the rollers on this side. And what we'll do is just kind of scrape it. And if you can just try to get it on the edge. That way you're not having a bunch of it kind of pile up on the inside here. And we'll keep going. You can see it's starting to press out. So then I'll just turn it, keep going. And then once we run out of grease, that's why I'll kick back all the rest of that that's extra sitting on there. I'll also typically try to scrape it all from the other parts of my hand to get it into one big pile again. There are grease like packing tools that you can get to. Essentially, it's just like a little press that you would set the bearing into and then press down on, kind of wiggle it around, and it'll press all of that grease in there for you. If you're someone that's not really going to be doing this too often, packing it by hand is good enough. I mean, as long as you get a pair of gloves, it's not really too big of a mess. But if you're someone who's going to be packing a ton of bearings, I'd definitely recommend picking up one. All right, so we've got it all the way around. Now what I'm going to do with this excess grease is just coat the whole outside of our bearing really well. And with this all nice and greased up. And now we'll drop this in. I like to grab it from the center so I can hopefully avoid getting grease all over the inside of our hub. There we go. And now I'm going to switch over to my inner bearing. We'll get that packed so that way we're not using multiple sets of gloves. And then from there, we can throw in our grease seal and get that packed into place too. Now for my grease seal, I like to just grab just a tiny little bit of grease. We're going to do a really fine film of that around our grease seal to help drive it in a little bit easier. All right, now we got that good. Now make sure that when you're driving this in, you're putting it in the correct way. You can see there's an opening here. We want that facing down. It's closed off here. We want that facing out towards our brake assembly. Make sure that we keep all the grease inside. can set this in place, and what you want to essentially have is a seal pusher, so that way you can actually hammer that in nice and flush with the hub here. If you don't have that, what a lot of people like to do is just take a 2x4 that's just wide enough to cover that, but obviously small enough to fit inside the hub, and you can hammer that down. Now, I found sometimes when I do that, the wood is soft enough that as you hammer it in, sometimes it'll over press the seal into place, and then now the seal isn't even, and sometimes that leads to a leak. So one thing I found that typically is always going to work is a large enough hole saw, because it's all metal, has no problem stopping right on the hub here, and it won't push it further than that. So I've got that in place. I've got a handle for our seal pusher, which is missing the attachments, so all we'll do, simple as that. Then all we want to do is just kind of feel around, make sure it's nice and flush, which it is. Using the hole saw, definitely the easiest way I have found so far. And at this point now, we're going to grease up our spindle, so just grab yourself another good glob. All right, we're going to rub that all over our spindle, aside from this back area right here. This is your grease seal is going to sit there, and we don't want that greased up. We don't want anything getting back behind it. So all of this, fair game right here. And we'll even add a little bit more in with the grease zerk fitting once we have our assembly in place. All right, so you can grab your hub. Make sure you got it going on nice and straight. We don't want to scratch our spindle. Push that all the way back. While that's back, we're now going to grab our outer bearing. We'll slot that in with the tapered side going towards the inside of our assembly. Now we can pop on our spindle washer, and that's just going to help provide even pressure up against our bearing, and then our castle nut. Now, I'm pretty sure I said earlier 1 1/8. Obviously the sizes are going to change depending on capacity. With our specific one today, it's 1 1/2 for the socket, and we're going to torque this down to spec, and then we'll back it off and use the cotter pin and castle nut. All right, so what we're looking for here is we don't want any play with our hub, so I shouldn't be able to kind of wobble it side to side at all, which pretty good. And I can spin, which also spinning this a little bit as we add in grease will help kind of transfer that around, really fill in that cavity. But now at this point, I'm going to back it off just a bit, and then we'll go finger tight. Now it's finger tight. May have to move it just a little bit while we figure out the cotter pin. Might have to come up a little bit more. Right there. Got our cotter pin through. Now, just double check it one more time, see if you got any side-to-side play. And then if you're all good, you can take one side of your cotter pin, so it's going to be 2 tines here that are sandwiched together. We're going to spread one up, one down, and that's just going to help prevent it from being able to come out of here, so that way we know for sure we won't be having our assembly come apart. So now I'm going to come with my grease gun. We'll give it a couple squirts. This is going to be coming out right at the back where our grease seal is. We don't want to go too crazy with it though, because we could end up blowing out the grease seal. So make sure you're spinning this, getting that grease flowing, and you can keep adding. Don't go too much. You're not putting a whole tube in here. We really just are wanting to fill in the cavity a bit. And once you fully see it fill, you'll kind of see the same thing that you saw on the ends of the bearing, where it has like kind of circles coming the whole way around here of lubrication. Now, I'm not going to overdo it here with that, so we might not see that today, just because we already got enough grease on here to be good. We'll spin that one more time. My dust cap in here, and I've got a drive tool so that I can hammer it in to our hub assembly, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. That gives us nice even pressure, and our dust cap is now fully seated in there, and that's going to do it for assembling our hub here. Now all we have left to do is just throw on our wheel, put on our lug nuts, and torque them down, and then we're good to go. That's going to do it for our closer look at the LubriMatic Prime Guard Hi-Temp wheel bearing grease. My name's Kevin, and if you still have some questions about what's going to be the right grease for your trailer setup, please feel free to reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, a comment on this video, or a phone call to our customer service department, and we'd be happy to help you out on your journey.